Cool. Thank you so much, Matt and Nusantara Arts, for inviting us to share with you some of our recent work. We are really fortunate, and thank you so much for joining us in the midst of the ostensible demise of the universe. Hopefully you're more optimistic than I have been in the past few weeks. But it's really great for us to be able to do this, and I'm really excited to be doing this with my partner Dewa, Ayu, and hopefully I don't hijack too much of the conversation. But before we begin, I'd like to just say, as a sort of traditional Balinese greeting, if everyone could just do an Om Swastiastu with us, right? Om Swastiastu. All right, thank you. Also, I don't know if this is against protocol, Matt, but it's really strange to us to be talking about our art to just names on a screen. If you are able to, if you're comfortable in doing so, if you have your video, that'd be awesome. I'd love to. All right, see, Liz, Otto, Tina, everyone. This is such a friendly gathering. Tante Lisa, Om Ben, look at all your beautiful faces. Awesome. Ed, great. Again, thank you so much for joining us, and we'll make this as interesting as possible. We're taking this as sort of an informal discussion and informal presentation. So at any point, if you would like to jump in and ask questions or have comments, we're more than willing to take them on the spot. Otherwise, we'll just kind of go down our roadmap, and it should be roughly a 30 to 35 minute presentation, along with watching videos and listening to some music and discussing about movement in various capacities. And then we'll have a larger discussion with anyone that has questions and or comments later on. Okay, so to begin, we will be sort of dissecting and thinking about a piece that Ayu and I wrote for Gamelan Tunas Mekar's 2019 tour to Bali last year, whom we have a lot of Gamelan Tunas Mekar members in here today. And for those of you that don't know, Gamelan Tunas Mekar has been a community Balinese gamelan ensemble in Denver, Colorado for the greater half of 30 years or so, okay? At which point my father has been primary artist in residence. So it was really cool to be able to go to Bali and not only go home for a little bit, but to bring the Colorado home to the Bali home for the second time. The first time was in 1996 with much different personnel. We're sort of going through a second generational change and have been for the past 10 years or so. And during this time, we performed at PKB, the Bali Arts Festival, along with 5 other locations across Bali. Krambitan Tabanan, Tegah Batu Lantang, which is a video that we'll be sort of dissecting today. And in Bangah Baturiti, where my family is from, okay? So with that as sort of the context for when this piece premiered, I'd like to watch the video as a whole first and listen to it. With in mind, we're framing this talk on the concept of commotion, co-motion, so co-motion, and ideas of social mobility. And I'll explain what we mean by that in a little bit. Okay, but before we do that, I'd like to watch the whole thing in its entirety. It's about 8 minutes long.
Demikianlah tari Laku diciptakan sama Putu Tangkas. Tepuk tangan.
Okay, the messages are flooding in that you have finished viewing the piece. If that's not true for everyone, then I apologize. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed and or hated it. Maybe some very strong emotion that is tied to viewing Balinese expressive arts online. Anyway, so the next point here is that we would like to sort of talk about the concept behind this creation, this choreography, the composition, and that is, we've sort of framed it, and we're thinking about this piece with the word Laku. So I'm going to talk a little bit about what how I view and perceive this term, this Balinese term, and then Ayu will talk a little more about her sort of conception around it and where they sort of intersect and or fall short of each other's understandings of it. Because first and foremost, this was a piece that we wanted to collaborate, or rather we inevitably had to collaborate overseas. And so there were some difficulties, which we'll talk about. But this is a medium in which we were able to confront our identities, confront our socialities, and above all, confront our hypocrisies, things that we say and do and feel, but may not align with some of the things, some ideologies as well, right? So these were ways we can work through those things together and overseas. So now this concept of Laku, when the term Laku is said in Balinese, the way I think about it is this sort of state of availability. Okay, so this state in which something becomes so popular that it is purchased, right? You have products or commodities in abundance, and on the day that you're selling these things, if they are Laku, that means a lot of people want them, right? A lot of people have purchased them, and there's an appeal to this product, right? I've extended that to think about the appeal of Colorado and Bali specifically, because that's where I've grown up and lived, and also where Ayu Eka is currently as well, right? Sort of bridging these worlds through this term Laku. So for the most part, I'm thinking about it as a state of availability, right? A state in which if something is Laku, that means there's an aura of enticement or appeal to it, right? And if something's not, then maybe you had a bad day, and there are potential ceremonies involved that might make your product more Laku, right? So I'll hand it over to Ayu now.
Thank you, Blee. So yeah, in terms of Laku too, when the first Putu sent me the concept, so I have to read it many times and also discuss it with him. But the term of Laku in Balinese also has many different meaning. For example, because I'm a dancer, so I'm always thinking about the concept, but it's also listen to the music. So the meaning of Laku also in Balinese is the act of or behavior, but it's also meaning direction, like that. So when I read his idea, or when I discuss his idea, I'm also oh well, I have a different perspective to seeing what Laku means, like that. For me, it's it's easier to think the term that I understand more, because when you are making a dance, it's not just you want to make some movement and then add it to the music, but first I have to really understand the music first, the melody and things, but then also what's the concept behind that. So when we discuss about choosing the name for our creation, oh, why don't we just use the term Laku? And then of course Putu already has his concept, and then I have a different perspective of this concept, and then it's actually it mixed well together, like that.
Yeah, so we're largely thinking about these in different ways, but they do at a certain point intersect in how we're thinking about, importantly, the world, right? How the social life and the sort of co-motion and commotion of life in Colorado and life in Bali. And to contextualize this a little bit further, we really wanted to create this piece because we were both, honestly, for lack of a better term, just quite frustrated with the amount of new personnel in Colorado and new personnel in Bali, right? Which has been happening for decades now. This has been historically because of the tourism industry and because of state infrastructure in Colorado. They're enticing places. I mean, who wouldn't want to live somewhere where you're in the city, and 5 minutes away from nature, right? So we're thinking about co-motion and commotion as an appeal or enticement that Laku sort of affords, right? That Laku gives to the people that are coming in, but also kind of takes away from people that are already living there. And in saying that, that's not entirely true as well, right? Because you wouldn't necessarily create an infrastructure that is accommodating to foreign personnel if you didn't want people there, right? Nonetheless, it does sometimes feel like an imposition when people come in and suddenly assume the role of either expat or cultural ambassador in this place, and or identify themselves as Coloradan in some way, right? Maybe you were born in New York and you moved to Colorado, and suddenly you're playing with identities a little bit based on geographic location, right? So we wanted to, again, create a piece that, and I don't presume to, for those of you that are into social theory and philosophy, I don't presume anything in terms of a structuralist model or something like that. But it does, there are moments in the piece that sort of align with how we're at least thinking about structures in Bali and Colorado, right? And for the most part, that is the idea of rame, or boisterousness, commotion in a place. These places, Bali and Colorado, are becoming more dense with people, inevitably becoming dense with cars, dense with urban development, all these kinds of things that are making things dense, right? And we're not taking a position that one is better than the other, although we can have that conversation at another point, at which we are very passionate about. But it does also imply, as Ayu said, a certain sense of direction, right? The direction to come in and establish yourself as a new social being. And so this is where the idea of social mobility comes in. So when Ayu and I, often every day, we argue about something, and social mobility is one of them. When we discuss social mobility, we're thinking about the stratification or the layering of people's social identity based on sort of a horizontal mobility, meaning just the travel of locale, just the change of different place, changing to a different place, right? Which doesn't necessarily mean that you change in social status if you move somewhere else, right? But in this context, there's an ostensible, or there's this aura, and some might call it an arrogance, that says, oh, I'm moving to this awesome hip place, now I'm cool. Or, oh, I'm moving to Bali and I have a home here and exercise my power over indigenous people, and thus I am a savior, cultural ambassadors, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Again, I don't want to get too much into that today, although we would love to continue to talk about that. Anyway, you find nuggets of these things in our piece, Laku, right? Whether it's musically, within movement, or just conceptually, right? But it's not outwardly obvious that that's what we're doing. And this is sort of where post-structural ideas come in, where the viewer, the audience member, doesn't necessarily know that that's what we're trying to relay to the audience, right? So from here, we'd like to keep all of those things in mind. And then we're sort of going to talk about the process in composing and creating Laku overseas, right? And these sort of complications, whilst having these ideas of the sort of commotion and the imposition of human bodies in different locale in our places, right? So I'd like to begin with Ayu talking a little bit about her role as a traditional / contemporary artist and how she sort of approached this with her dancers.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, for me, this doing this process, because it's like long distance, it's quite hard for me because whenever I create something with Sudamani, I'm always like sit with a composer, like talking, like discuss, like something is not with, I always feel like kind of, it's not weird, how to say that, like talking like with the laptop or like arguing with the laptop, something like that, and then not able to really, you know, interact like human to human like that. So it's quite challenging for me, but I'm trying to like adapt, because like for me this project is really interesting. It's the like first project like I did with my partner, and then I'm so like passionate, and also I really like the music first, and then I'm also very interested in the concept behind this piece. So the first one is the LDR, that is I'm not really used to do that. For example, I'll say with Sudamani, whenever I create something, we always sit with a musician. So we like, and in the process is, so they're making music, and then as the choreographer, I will sit there and then listen to the music and also like join their process there. So the term of being there in the process is very important for me. But like with Putu, like I think I told him that the way for me to process, to create something is always, how you say that, the present is very important for me. So it's quite hard. Like, for example, he's sending this music, and then in the moment, I'm like, because of the time difference like that, usually like I get more inspiration. For example, like maybe in the morning, oh, I have this idea, or like in the afternoon, like different mood again with the music, and then other night it's different. So it's hard for me, like, oh, I want to talk about this with him like right now, but the time different is like, oh, I can't like that. So it's like quite stressful for me, because in Sudamani I can just go and then sit with the musician or like talking with the composer, and then like talking about my idea and then discuss for that. But I really actually, I'm surprised that actually I'm able to do like this project via like long distance. I'm also a musician, so it's kind of like, in some ways it's easier to talk with this with Putu, because I kind of understand also with the music or harmony or things, or if I feel like I think this part is too short or too long like that. But I understand that because the musician is not, sorry, like Balinese, so I have to asking Putu also like, how could I explain that so people not get like offended, or you know, there's no misunderstanding behind that. So it's talking a lot about like how to communicate better in that terms. But it's also like, for me, the process is always, I have to listen to the music like many times. For me, it's not like to creating a movement. It's not just create the movement, but I always need a time to listen to music and then let my body like respond to the music like naturally. So it's not like, okay, I wanted this like instructor, I want to do this, but it's always like need some time and then sitting down and listen to music, or just reading all his concept or my concept, the idea, and then my body will respond to it like naturally like that. And then also the hard thing is also to explain with my dancer what's the like concept behind this, because it's really it's not abstract, it's really like kind of narrative, the idea, but I have to explain to them like on different way. So that's why like I explain to them the term of Laku in my perspective, like direction, or and also like behavior, the act. So like that, a lot of this movement, it's really like meditating at first. So like I want them to like really like feel the music, and then to also asking their opinion, what do you think about this music? And then when I add the movement also, I will ask them like, how do you feel about this movement? Are you like comfortable doing this? Or a lot of discussion like that. So, and then also, like I said, in like Suriname, for example, I will like dance like with the live music, and then we discuss about that like on the spot like that. So for now, I have to like record it and then send it to Putu and like asking his opinion like that. So it's not complicated. It's just took like sometimes, and then also to get the same mood as the like with the timing and the mood. It's for me is quite challenging for me like that. So, but I'm so glad that my dancer, they already like work with me for a long time. So even though like the idea, the concept behind it, it's really like, they don't really understand it first, but they're trying to like asking like a question, like, what do you mean by this? Like, and also with the movement, I always make a kind of like unique movement like that. And then they accept it more, how you say it? Like freely accept that without like really question it. But at some point too, they're also, most of them are really, they're also musicians. So when I create something, they also give me like a feedback like that. Oh, I feel more comfortable if you do movement like this or like that. And then I'll also like, oh, I think this movement are really like fit with the concept like that. So I'm always like open also of the feedback from them. So it's always, this project, it's very like challenging, but also very interesting for me like that.
Yeah, very nice. So obviously we're discussing a process in which we have to create this in chunks, and you know, those of you that are composers and choreographers, well, this isn't anything new, right? The challenges were things like time differences and things like that, and just if our visions of this concept align. And fortunately, the first sort of iteration of the dance and the music put together, it fell in very nicely, and we were both just kind of struck, and we were like, wow, this is actually what we were both like thinking about in terms of the sonic world and the movement, right? But to give you a little more of an example, I'd like to show you a little bit of the end of the piece, because this is really where the identity of this piece lives. Prior to that, it's a little more, we're doing a little more pseudo-traditional things, right? They're more idiomatic to Balinese expressive arts and Gamelan in general. But the end of it is really where Ayu and I, not only our identities, our reclamation of indigeneity, but also our ideas of Laku come out. And that is, in this composition, there's a moment of improvisation for some people. And then at the end, because as some of you know, I'm very influenced by heavy metal music, there always has to be some rhythmic craziness, at least for a moment, right? So I want to show you sort of the first thing that I gave people in Illinois, in Colorado, in Bali, sort of the nugget, and sort of, I want us to sort of clap this along too. So I'm going to share my screen real quick. Technologically utopian society yet. Anyway, so this is sort of the first nugget of the piece that I started with and that I sent out to people, right? And as you can see, the bottom stanza there, it's in 5/16. Those of you that are music nerds and or whatever, you can see that it's also very convoluted. It just looks like grapes on a vine, right? And I wanted it to be that primarily because I'm not a huge fan of Western notation, not because it's not useful, but because my association with it in music school and in university was always like, as I was learning to read and write Western notation, many of my colleagues and classmates and teachers even would say, oh, you're Indonesian, you don't need to learn this at all, right? And it was this kind of dismissal that was very off-putting and put a bad taste in my mouth. Anyway, I also use the just kind of a grid cipher notation at the top there to one, to make it easier to look at for some people, but also I use each line of these as my new kecap. So this is a kecap in 5 that is forthcoming that we'll talk about later. Anyway, so this bit at the bottom here, I want you to just clap along with me. It's just gonna go. All right, so you can do that on your own. I'll repeat it a few times just so you can lock in and do this. I don't, obviously you do whatever you want, but here it is. Ready, and. All right, so I looped it 3 times there. And you can see that that's what it's doing in the grid notation as well at the top. So in this section that we'll listen to in a second, I want you to just internalize that rhythm. Ba, 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 ba. Okay? And then we will take a listen. It's going to be very choppy, but at least we can watch a little. Sorry. So this is the pakad, or the ending. Okay, so you can see that sort of figuration, and I hope that you can hear that a little bit. And it's superimposed over a melody that is in 5. It's a string of 5, 4, 3 times, and then a melody of 4, 4 at the end. So do na ne, or no na ne no ne no na ne no ne no na ne no ne no na ne no. Okay, so what I did here is the gangsas and any really rhythmically ornamented instruments such as rayong, gangsa, cheng cheng, kendang, they're playing this 5/16 figuration, right? Jang, 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 jang. So it's a measure of 5/16, measure 5/16, measure 5/16, and then at the end 4/16. The melody is doing that same thing, but in 5/4. So it's superimposed and creating these polyrhythms and these metric modulations over that, right? And then the last bit, the pakad, the actual leaving of the space, is a melody that's in 11. So as I show you this this example, just right as the gangsas start, just count to 11 and then repeat. Okay. Here it is one more time. So in those 2 examples, we're basically, in that last example, we're playing the same thing, right? This melody in 11, dong, dong, ding, ding, dong, dong, ding, dong, ding, ding. Kantilan, gangsta pamade, jublag, we're all playing the same thing, but every iteration or every time it repeats, kantil is the only one that repeats it as written, right? Pamade drops a beat, and that's where you get these sort of melodic clashes, and then jublag also does that the 3rd time through. So I'm going to show you the end of this one more time as it is seen in the video. All right. So I just wanted to briefly touch on that a little bit, because those were sort of my sonic ideas about the growing tension of that 5/16 mode as being kind of stuck in traffic, stuck in Colorado traffic, or stuck in Bali traffic, and you're frustrated, but you can't do anything about it. And then at the end there, we sort of move into movement to this sort of rame dispersal of people, where you're kind of moving the same direction, but you're kind of not, right? You're all trying to get home, but your homes are in different places. So you have people driving on the sidewalks, you have people, you have cars driving way too fast in Colorado highways, and all these things. These are kind of things that are happening at the end here. And as you can see in the dance movement, as Ayu will talk about in a second here, it's doing a similar thing as well. You?
Yeah, like so when I forgot to tell everybody that when the first time we hear the music, because all of us, the dancers, also musician in Suriname, so they're like, their first impression are like, oh, this music is very good and the melody is really good. And then when we get to that part, they were like, like that, all of us, because some of them are like a gangsa player and I'm a drummer, and some of them are reyong player, really good. And then they were like, we get really interested in this, in this like the music and in the polyrhythm, because usually my uncle also like composed one very complicated music for us as a woman gamelan, girls gamelan in Suriname. But when we got there, all of us were like, like that. So we're trying to like following the rhythm, because like my sister, she's like really good like gangsa player. She's trying to like imitate and get the melody, all of us. And then I remember we were sitting there, all of us, because we really want to make with our feet like that. We trying to like following the rhythm, and then so we are sitting together, and then we're like tapping on the floor, like trying to get this polyrhythm together. But then I was thinking like, I think this music we need to add like some movement that are like match with this rhythm, right? But yeah, we kind of like arguing with you, right, Putu? Are we arguing? Because he like, and then, but I, of course, I understand that the concept of that we are like trapped in the like traffic, but then we have to stay there. And then, but I really want to like respond, like our body wants to respond to this music because it's really interesting rhythm. And then I remember like I just do the movement, like following the music with our body or like with our feet, like make the same rhythm. Like all of us really, oh wow, this is really cool, like let's try it together. But then yeah, what you call this term, like, well, I think you like should like stay and then like let the music like playing. So our body were like, we can't stay. So I just said to my dancer like, well, okay, just move your head like that and just move like up or down, because like, yeah, it's quite hard for us because we're all musicians. Like we want to like add something to this rhythm too. But then, well, okay, I respect the music too. So we're trying to just stay and then just like do that movement. And then yeah, well, for the dancer also we are very like appreciate this, like the idea and the music. And also when I told them, well, the musician is not Balinese, and then most of them are, people like in Colorado. So they're like, wow, they're really good musician. And then, yeah, something like that. So they really appreciate that. And then like when we're dancing, of course, we have to be like happy with the music first, because we want to make it, the first impression is very important for me. It's like, do you really enjoying this music? And then after that, we can like enjoy when we are dancing and also feel happy when we dance the movement. So that is very important to build this connection between the dancer and musician, because we only get to see the whole musician before we perform. So we're trying to like get as much time as possible, because for Balinese, because we're such have a strong community, it's very important to build connection first, not just for the music itself, but also with the person, with the musician, the person who playing the music. So yeah, I'm so glad we at least have like quite time to practice together. So like for the dancer itself also, it's more like it's important, and also they can get like chemistry. I'm sorry, my English. So yeah, I think for me also as a dancer and also as a musician, I really like this kind of like of music. It's like unusual. It's not really unusual because in Sudamani we also create like weird and complicated music, but in terms of like to add it in a dance piece, it's quite new for me. So I really appreciate it. Actually, it's hard,
Yeah,
but it's
so,
hard.
so yeah, the section we're describing was basically the most contentious part of our process because, as Ayu was saying, she really wanted to move to it, but I was like, no, juxtapose, just stand there and just don't do anything. She's like, I got to do something, and let me just shake my head a little bit. And then to flip that on its head, there was a point in the music too where I wanted to do something, and she yelled at me and was like, I don't like that. So we'd like to think it's an equal partnership. The last thing that we want to show you for today before wrapping up and concluding is that this section of improvisation, which is actually very brief, is a good way to let you know about Ayu's ideas of costuming and also dance, these particular kind of movements. So we'll watch it real quick, and it's very short. So, and then Ayu will discuss. Okay, so in that moment there, some of the musicians had instructions to lock onto a dancer and sort of improvise with a dancer, right? Most of the other musicians that were taking on melodic roles kept the melodic structure there, but were free to mute and unmute at will, okay? And this is an image of our performance at PKB, and Ayu, can you talk about the costuming and the idea behind those movements in that section?
Yeah. And this section is also kind of like interesting for us. For me, I'm usually dance solo dance because I really like to doing improvisation, especially with the drum part. I usually dance like Trunajaya or Palawakil like that. And then for me, this is like how you say that? Finally, there's a music that allow like all this dance are doing kind of improvisation, but actually also like we also set some movement. So like when the first time when I make this movement with my dancer, I told them like I think in this part I want you guys to doing improvisation. So their first impression were like, oh, what kind of improvisation you're talking about like that? So it's like first when we explore the movement, I want them to like freely explore the dance movement they want like that. And then I just like standing there and watching them, okay, this movement or that movement like that. But I'm like, for most of them, it's quite like new because in Tari Kreasi, especially like in Tari Bali tradisi like that to do improvisation, sometimes it's not hard, but it's just new things. So I remember when we doing exploration for the movement, some of them still like kind of confused. So I let them to listen to music and then asking them like how your body like respond to this music, for example. And then we doing exploration and lesson, and then this movement like it's just like for me like naturally naturally out. It's not just like I'm thinking, oh, okay, I want to add this movement like this. I think it's like fit with the music, but it's actually like I listen to the music, we listen to the music, and it's just our body like move it like freely and naturally like that. And then when I took like recording the video, because I have to watch we all together move, and then I think like really, oh, that actually look really nice together with the music. And then so we four of us kind of like doing different things, two in the front and two in the back. So because I can see their character, like the two in the back, they always have to face each other because I know that they are not very like confident to doing their solo. So that's why me and my sister in the front doing that, and then I told them to doing like a different things from me, for example, in the exploration movement. But then I end up to like, I think we still need to like set the dance the dance movement, because the music is already really like free. So I feel like, okay, maybe we have to do like, it's look like free, but it's actually like we set it with the melody, or like I told the dancer, maybe you have to follow the Ryong pattern, and then I follow like the Jublak pattern like that, or like the drum part. So it's very challenging, but I feel like really happy actually, because it's a challenge. And then at the end, my dancer, they also like really enjoy. It's like a new knowledge, you know. So for their body to respond the music more freely, there's actually like a different way to respond than, you know, the usual thing they do in a traditional dance. And then also for the costume, I designed that. I don't know, it's just the idea is just coming up, and then I just like draw it like that, and then I don't remember how it's come out to my mind. It's just for the first time I designed the headdress, and then when I show it to my friends that are helping me to making the costume, he was like, like, okay, because it's like, one of my friends told me, I mean, she's not Balinese, like it's look really futuristic, but it's actually from, the idea is coming from really like old costume, but I just like combine it together, like chili in the front. Chili means like for the goddess of rice, and then this part on the top is actually from Rajang. So I just mix that together, the shape of the headdress. And then also for the costume, for the body, the clothes, the body costume, I inspired a lot with kain geringsing, which is from the Eastern Bali. It's really like famous now, but I want to make I want to combine more color in it, so not so much gold, not so much how you say it, not so much property. It's actually just a cloth, just kain, just a sarung, like, and then just playing with the color. And then when the costume is done, I was actually like in Mexico when my costume maker are doing that. So it was really funny. So I remember, because he knows that I'm really like strict to like choosing any color, he doing like Skype. So I have to wake up like really, really early in the morning when I was in Mexico. And then he's like doing video call in the market. So do you like this color, or do you like this pattern of the kain of the sarung, like that? So for me, it's really it's challenging, because to work like long distance too for the costume. And my friend, I'm so glad that he's like willing to do all of that work. He always like bring his like phone whenever he going to the market to find such the material, or when he also making the headdress. And then so also, the costume we were making in like a long distance situation. But he doing really good job with all this kain, the color, the mixing of the color, and then the special pattern I want, he get that in Eastern Bali. And then I think like when we uploaded our first performance, like a lot of my Balinese friends like really like the costume. It looked like new thing, but it's actually just mixed from the like traditional that we already have. So yeah, they really like appreciate that, especially the headdress. So
Nice. Yeah, it was great to look at while we played music too. Awesome. So obviously, what we're saying is we were very well prepped to collaborate long distance pre-COVID-19. Not to say we figured out how to do it in any way, shape, or form, but it was a learning curve. So to conclude, this whole process, and where we're sort of, I realized we went way over 30 minutes, but I just want to say that this project was, again, a way for us to think about Laku as changes in behavior, changes in directionality, and changes in social status based on the enticing nature of a particular place, such as Colorado and Bali, right? And what we can do to sort of be more empathetic and sympathetic to not only those that are coming in, but those that are traveling abroad, right? Because we are obviously living in a time where seems like people think they can do whatever they want, which is true. Yes, you can do whatever you want, and most of the time there are no repercussions depending on who you are. But we are all obviously different people. Maybe it's not so obvious, I don't know. I look a little bit like Chris, so it's a way to confront these things that we're dealing with through artistic medium. And for Balinese people, this is not only a way of existing, but is literally existence, right? So for a lot of artists around the world, sometimes it's as a form of entertainment, as a form of something that you have a choice in. For a lot of Balinese people and Indonesian people in general, it sometimes is not a choice, right? So we kind of have to confront these things through our artistic works. So we'll leave it at that. Thank you so much. I think I'll hand it over to Matt, and he can decide what to do next. Thank you.
Thank you, both of you. We're going to open it up to questions now, if y'all would like to take some questions. I'm sure there's a couple of them in here. I actually have one. Jody had to leave, but she did put a question here a little bit earlier, and she wanted to ask, are there specific movements in the dance or elements of the music that convey the ideas you are concerned with? If we watch the performance again, what would you want us to see?
You.
I'm sorry, I'm thinking.
I can jump in briefly there. The things that we wanted to show you pertaining to the ideas that we described today, we've already done that. The sort of improvisational moment to confront our traditional / contemporary identities, and also whilst being afar, what it means to be Indonesian in the United States, or what it means to be Balinese working with a largely American ensemble. And then the sort of really heavy rhythmic moment that's brief, that comes from my fascinations with heavy metal, and I just wanted to stick that in there, because there are a lot of Balinese compositions where you take that phrase or that moment and create an actual section about it, right? A lot of contemporary music, Gamelan does that. My attention span is no greater than a goldfish, so I just stick it in there very briefly, and then that's a little bit of a comment on access, right, and accessibility too. So, you?
I think in the movement, like in the beginning, I said the movement actually like really like meditating, like we're doing down really slowly and then like up like that, really fast like that. So then for me, when I make this movement, is like I was holding this the feeling of like when this change like happens, especially because I living in Ubud, and then the change is so like really fast. But usually like for the Balinese people, we have to like holding a lot of emotion like inside. We don't really like express that or like really like shout out what like in our head. So I really in this movement, in my idea, I was like keeping it inside, like just like breathing it in. So the movement is really slow, and also a lot of like the movement looking for the left and right, and then the composition is always like looking for like direction. So when we do improvisation also, this part when we do different movement for of us, also like a lot of like this are actually to to respond to the idea of Laku itself. Looking for direction is also like the meaning of act or behavior. And then in the last part, the movement when we doing to like diagonal, in my head is like, it's like what Putu said, it's like crossing the street, but we are like trapped in the traffic, like because of all this change is happening. And then what we can do is like, like respond it like that, because it's like Balinese people character. We're not really like confronted, but we're staying there and then like survive with all this change that's happening. So, and then also this part of this is like, it's kind of the impression I want to bring is like the celebration also. The celebration and like the happy impression, because like build the mood from like really meditating, really like inhale and then like really into the music, and then got really happier, and then we got to this like, it's not a climax like some term, this part like the improvisation part. Actually for me, my impression is like into the climax, actually like going to that this climax, doing to the peak of our like concept, like looking for direction or like the attitude, the act like that. And then at the end, the part that the last part to doing, so that we are looking we are making this like diagonal. In my head is like a what, how you say that, a crossing like the street, or a crossing like kind of the line like that. But I don't want to make it like this, but I want to make it like diagonal. And also like in the aesthetic of the movement, it's look, I don't know, it's look just better than like this, and then I doing like diagonal. And then of course we actually really want to respond that, because it's like releasing our stress, right, with the music, like da, 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 and then we want to respond like with our body. But yeah, we're trying to like stay still there, but then like at least doing that with our head to respond. So music, but also our concept of that trapping in the traffic, or trap in all those changings around us that's happening a lot now in Bali, especially in Ubud area. Like that. So yeah,
Thank you. That's it. It looks like Chris Hewitt has a question. If you'd like to jump in, Chris.
Hey guys.
Hi, Chris.
Yo. So, thank you for doing this. My experience playing this piece was great. It was probably, out of all the tunes we played in Bali, probably one of my favorites. I just think it's like so gorgeous and has this like really interesting, ambiguous mood to it. So I really love playing it, and I was wondering if there are any other like pieces that you kind of reference from Balinese composers that like explore some of these same things, which give it like this really ambiguous mood.
Yeah, thanks for the question, Chris. And for those of you that are tuning in, Chris is one of the Gamelan International Choir members that went to Bali with us last year, and he's getting way into Gamelan, sometimes a little too fast for me. Can't keep up with you. Anyway, so in terms of form, I really listen to a lot of the Tari Kreasi Gong Kebiar competitions that have been happening within the past decade. And also, as you know, I'm a big fan of Pak Dewa pieces as well, right? They just tend to be way longer than again, my attention span. So I try and compress things. I can't say for sure that I was influenced by one piece or another, but just kind of the collective body of Tari Kreasi as it is seen and experienced at PKB, but also kind of subverting those idioms as well. But I did take a lot of influence from a band called Hiatus Coyote in terms of melodic construction, and also from a band called Meshuggah in terms of rhythmic construction, right? We'll save that for another time. But for the most part, that's where, yeah, Miranda, that's where my head was at in trying to associate these the artistic elements to the more social ones. Thank you.
Ed Luna wants to jump in with a question he'd like to probe. He'd like to probe something.
Hi, Bli Ed.
Hi. How are you?
Becik.
Yeah. So I noticed in sort of like the third section, there was a part where the dancers sort of fell. I sort of say that this is sort of like the nadi stance, where you have the arms down at your side and the dancers are leaning to one side or the other. And I thought that was like an effective use, especially in the sort of, if you can say that there is a narrative, and I definitely think there is, I thought it was sort of like an effective use of that particular idiom. And I'm just wondering whether, because I would say that most like choreographies, most contemporary choreographies who use that specific stance, they want to convey, they want to index that, yeah, this is like a trance going on. But I'm just wondering if you know of any other choreographies that have used that as sort of like a statement of or commentary on just sort of like the modern happenstances or something like that, or some sort of like meta commentary. So I'm just wondering if you have any comments about that.
You?
Thank you, Billy Ed. That's interesting. Like, okay, usually, I really like seeing like really like, especially like kreasi dance, like use that movement, because usually when you dance in Balinese, you always have to do like agam, like this, like straight, and then like a very like specific position of the body. But when I did that, like I told myself, just put your hand down like that. Just put your hand down and then just move like you're not doing agam, you just like against those term and the like, position of agam. But like I said, because I think it's they already used to like work with me with, so we explore a lot of maybe like new Balinese dance movement like that. But it's like I said, I'm trying to tell the dancer like please, like when you dance this or when you're thinking about the concept of the dance, don't just thinking about like the basic agam or the basic position agam in Balinese dance. So when I ask them to like freely explore the movement, so I want them to like really do like anything they want, like modern dance or just jump around just like that. And then so I just got this idea of this movement and actually like trees that are falling like that. So like it's also like we it's not, I just want to make like something the statement of that, like for Balinese dance, you not just use like a specific movement. For example, like in Gagambuhan or like Topeng, they do a lot of this, right? Like Nayog, like that. So they already have
Nayog,
their their character for Nayok like this or Gambo really slow. But that I want to make like something like authentic for Laku. So I just like, well, what about you just put your hand down? And then that exactly like Bliad, it's also about when you're really enjoying doing some movement and then not really think about it, it's also like part of trance, like you said. Like, so they don't really think about, okay, position or agam or like those pakam. Pakam means the rules for specific agam. So forget about that. Put your hand down and just move like this. So the first they feel like really weird. I'm like, if you feel weird, that's what I want. If you still want to look pretty like that, then that's not it like that. So when we do exploration, it's like, because Balinese, when we practice Balinese dance, like tradition, you always want to do like perfect agam position like that, right?
Right.
Even though you're doing ayog, this is really a simple movement, but it actually a lot of energy behind those simple movement. You holding your breath or the technique is like that. But here, you forget all of that. You're just standing there, put your hand down and just move like this. So it's like, for them, it's kind of like the new impression and also like the new perspective of like movement that they actually can do in Balinese Kreasi dance. So something new for them too. But for me, because I really like doing theater too, like contemporary arts, and then also I'm doing monologue too. So I have a lot of like idea of like some movement that actually can add into like Balinese dance. And then I think because Putu's music, when we discuss about that, like there's like a new concept behind this music and then like new rhythm that I never heard, but also his idea because he's living in America, but also like Balinese at the same time. So there's like, even though there's something new, I can feel there's a link inside those. That's why when I create the movement and the dance, there's also, I'm trying to thinking not just as a Balinese dancer, but it also like more universal like that. So yeah, the feeling when I get that, when I do this movement is like, the first time it's like complicated because this is not we actually do in like Balinese dance. We have to do like perfect agam and just move our body like what we used to it in Balinese dance. So it's actually like my protest for me also for all this change that happened. At some ways, we have to respond to that, but I want to respond it in my own way. So yeah, I hope that's answer your question.
Thank you.
So yeah.
Actually, I have a question about process. So I love this whole how you worked it out between working overseas and everything like that. I'm wondering what happened when you practiced it for the first time with the dancers and with the musicians. Was that in Colorado? Did they come to the U.S. or was it when you went to Bali? And did anything change during rehearsals? Did you have to sort of like change music or change dance that you thought was going to work and didn't work, or maybe it worked better than you imagined it would? What happened there?
Totally. Do you want to answer, Ayu?
Yeah, I remember we have like quite a big arguing because I wanna like shorten some of the part in the beginning. When we doing pengawa, so
Beginning.
because like I used to like work in Suriname, I just tell them like, can you cut this part because I think it's too long or I think it's too short, and then like in the way like I'm talking with Putu is also like that, and then I understand that there can be like misunderstanding, right, Putu? Or am I wrong?
So, I understand everything you're saying.
So like so in Bali when we work together, of course, I usually work like so the music is finished first, and then I will listen to music like over and over again. So and then I'm trying to just doing with the movement. Or I have such an idea, I really want to make the movement or like this, or like the idea of like sometimes I have to wait like to my body, like without thinking, just let it move. And then so when the first time it's happened with my dancer, we are actually just there waiting for me, and I just like standing there, just close my eyes and not doing anything, and then just let them listen to music like that, for example. And then when we are working on it until maybe like half of the dance are finished, and we start asking for them like, what do you think about this music or this part? And then we feel like on this part are too long like that. So like, I think this part is like too long. Maybe it's better to make it shorter. So like, because I already used to like just speak my opinion with the music, like can you just cut this part because it's too long or like that. And then I understand that I have to find like a different way to explain that my opinion, because I know that the musician is not like Balinese, so I need to find a way to explain to them without it doesn't mean like the music are bad, but it's just in the dance I think it will be better if like maybe it's shortened a little bit like that. So yeah.
So those are one of the main things that was difficult, right? So the first actual premiere of this piece and the first time the musicians and the dancers performed live at rehearsal was in Bali. I premiered an iteration of this piece in Illinois, actually, a few months before, just to get some ideas out. But that was without dance, and it was only about a third of the piece. Tina will know. And so the very first time the dancers and musicians actually saw each other live was in my family's village in Banga. And it was a pretty surreal moment, primarily because everyone in Colorado were working so hard on making our repertoire concise, right? They were working really hard to perform these pieces. We had a lot of members in the group that were new to even Gamelan, and we're asking them to play like really Kabiar style music that they should have no business learning right now, but we're going to do it anyway. And they did a wonderful job. It was awesome. And practicing Laku the first time, I could tell that there were moments where Ayu and the dancers for Laku would do these really different movements. And the GTM musicians, at least some of them, they just like eyes fixated and jaws on the floor, and we're just like, oh, that was so tight, that was awesome, blah, blah, and they were really excited. So I think it helped give a boost. There were some moments where we had to cut some things and condense things and stuff like that. But the anecdote Ayu was describing was basically like, these musicians were working so hard on not just Laku, we can't just change things like 2 days before we're going to perform, right? So we got into a little bit of butting heads, but yeah, it's not fun if you don't, right?
Yeah, because like when you do music, you really like enjoy in such a melody. I understand that because we are also musicians here. So when we're doing the movement also, there's a term in Bali, we call it mel. Mel, it means too much, like that. So we are thinking, we really enjoying the melody, but when we actually move, like maybe like the same 1, 3 or 4 times like that, we just feel like, I think we have to make it like shorten to make the message or like the aesthetic of the dance like come through the audience like that. So that's why we are like suggest that maybe we can like change some part, because we feel like the dance move in the when we dance also we have to create such like mood and also like really enjoying the music. And then if we feel like I think we can change something like that, it's like a suggestion. It's not like you have to just cut or change anything, but it's like suggestion, because in dance there's also like a rhythm. Is not just following the rhythm of the music, but also dance itself independently have the rhythm to respond to the music, to have the connection with the music. So yeah.
Thank you for answering my question. Does anybody else have any other questions they would like to throw into the ring here, or any comments?
I think Lisa.
It was great. Thank you so much. This is really interesting project and dance and music and everything. So I was really curious about what you were saying in the beginning about the social mobility and arrogance kind of people assuming they can kind of take on the identity of a place that wasn't their own, or I'm not sure if I understood that right, but is that something that is expressed in this piece that I missed, or in the dance? Like the part that Eka was talking about with the arms down, and where you just kind of break out of the whole Balinese dance traditional movements. Was that an example of that, or like a transgression of something? I don't know, maybe you understand my question.
Yeah, totally. And thanks for that question. That is something that has been a central tenet in this project, at least for Ayu and myself. And this is a good way to sort of talk about the internal politics that we're dealing with ourselves and sort of the interiority. Because as I said at the beginning, we are fairly political artists and we like to make political art, but whether we want to get our politics across to the audience is really it's not that important to us. It's more important that we find a way to reclaim indigeneity within ourselves through the art that we're making. Primarily because everyone's going to have a different interpretation of the artwork that we're making anyway, and we don't want to sort of superimpose on anyone's initial affect or your hermeneutics with it, right? And so there weren't overtly visually or sonic things other than the things we've talked about that were dealing with this social mobility. But as a performer, as the director for this piece, and as Ayu as the choreographer, and I'm not trying to speak for her, but it was a way to think about how the status of Balinese people has sort of changed a little bit in tandem with the decade-long industry of tourism, which Dr. Liz Macy and you, Tanta Lisa, can talk to a lot more in terms of the historicity of that. But just kind of the feeling of, for example, right now, my family usually goes back to Bali every year, right? Not only to bring students from the US or other places, but to see our family, see people that are our blood and some that are non-blood family. And we can't do that right now, so we have to experience this sort of the community, the familial community from afar and mediated through technologies. And in even just trying to contact our family, we're bombarded with news about expats in Bali being reckless and destroying the place. And these aren't new things, obviously, but the accessibility to these things is a fairly new phenomenon with social media and with what we're doing right now, right? Zoom and Facebook and things like that. So all of these kinds of things are happening as a rame thing, as commotion within ourselves to collaboratively motion with other people that we're actually in practicing with in real life, in real time. So when we're thinking about social mobility, we're maybe it's not entirely evident that our social status has changed in terms of a career path or in terms of a personal identity, but there are moments where it does feel like that we don't necessarily have control over, right? Where our social status changes, not because we decided to, but because other people have told us what we should be. So that's kind of where our ideas lie there. And Ayu can speak if that was true or not with her.
Yeah, like from the dance perspective, it's like it's also like so like my personal like journey to be able to be like confident to create a new dance. So there's a lot of things going. I have like a lot of experience in Balinese like tradition art, and then I really like love doing that, and I started that since I was very young. And then there's a like time that I am also like interested on learning like theater and like monologue. In doing so, I was thinking like maybe I will like that more, for example, like because like doing theater and monologue is new things for me. And then also it's like it's easier because in monologue you can like speak really what in your head, like to doing, you know, telling a narration or something, and then the audience can like understand that. But when doing dance, I feel that it's very abstract, and then sometimes it's really hard to tell people what is actually like in my mind, what's the message I want to tell them. But in this movement, because I feel like I really respect the traditional Balinese tradition, like pakem. Pakem means the rules, and then I really love doing that. And then so when I actually learning something else, theater and also monologue, I actually more like falling in love again with that, the old tradition that I have learned, because I see it from a different perspective like that. Usually like when I make new dance, I always think like, oh, I have to do this certain movement because that's the rule. Like, for example, for Legong, you do pemesan and then pengawa. There's always a rule, like first you're doing this like a structure. But when I learned like, you know, when I going out to learning theater and like monologue, it's actually, you can see that from a different perspective, but still based on that tradition you have, like that already written in my idea. So also like when I heard like Putu's opinion about mobility and then this change that happened, of course in Bali, because I live in Ubud, a lot of things going on. Like before, people coming to Ubud to learn dancing and music, no, they would just want to do yoga like that. So it's like, but well, that's the change that happened. And then because I'm just an individual, and then I can speak that out loud from my art, from my dance and music. So I have like some ways to talking and to tell people about my opinion. But sometimes it's like hard, right, to stop this changing. So from my personal experience, when I create this movement, I just want to like, okay, let's just make like something like unusual, but it's actually still based on that experience. So when I do this movement and then doing that, it actually like, how you call that? Apa dan pasrah beli, like surrender, like to accept all of that. And then because we in Balinese people, we live from tourism, and then all this tourism thing like bring a lot of change, and then it's like, it seems like that must happen, and you cannot like stop that, like all this influence to come. So that's why I just like, for my personal experience, I just want to like show people that we can also like do some change, but not really like forget the root or the identity. So that's why, like Pak Ed said, this movement actually you do when you're doing trance, but it's not many people like choreograph some movement in Tari Kreasi and add this movement inside, and then actually people will see that like a different message. Like for example, if you do trance dance, and of course that's something normal, you trance, you can do whatever you want, and then you can control your body. But here is actually in Tari Kreasi, you just want to tell like it's something happened, it's something changed also in Balinese art. But it doesn't mean that we want to get out from our tradition, but it's just, you know, to respond to this changing that happened actually. So yeah.
Thank you. I appreciate the answer.
We have a question from Jim W.
Jim W. Can't hear you, Jim W.
You're muted, Jim.
All right, how's this? Got me? Okay. Yeah, so I was going to ask a similar question that Ed asked, but I think he asked it so much better than I ever could. So you answered it quite well. But I just want to say on that note, and I don't want to get him in trouble, but I noticed all week when we were rehearsing the song or when we were at Compound in Banga, Pakmati kept making fun of, like, in a playful way, was making fun of that movie. And I kept seeing him do it, like whenever especially to Putu, was kind of teasing him about it. And I was thinking, well, this is a unique kind of thing that's not necessarily is traditional in Balinese dance, but you spoke on it very well. So I thank you for that. If you have anything else to say on it, it was very interesting because it was such a unique thing that I hadn't seen in Balinese dance before. And I have a second question on top of that on the costuming. You talked about the headdress being original piece that you designed for this performance or for this number, and with Balinese music itself being somewhat transient in that, like, pieces come and go and they change over time because they're not written down. And with the costuming, is that piece meant to be permanent, or will you reuse it? Will you tear it down? Is it thrown away after you're done performing? That's it.
The first to answer your first question, as anyone here that knows Made Lasmawan, he likes to poke fun at things and make things not so serious, right? Which is a good quality to have. And I think Liz Macy will send a video of him making fun of the movements, which is it's good. It's endearing, and it means a lot when someone invests enough attention and their experience to be able to try and imitate the movement, right? As for the sort of scrambling for words here, but as for the piece and the costuming, Ayu had a really good story she told me yesterday about that some people wanted to use the costume, and maybe you can talk about that. And you just talk about it.
Well, actually, I'm kind of wish like people started doing meme on that movement like that. Actually, I don't really expect people really surprised with the movement, because in my head, I don't really want like people get shocked. What is that? Like, because for my personal idea is just, I think it's because I'm just too focused, like how I wanna like people like get this message, and then like also for my dancer to experience something like quite different from what they usually do to dance like Balinese, like Tari Kreasi. So when people start talking like that, like, how do you get this movement? Like when I'm talking with, the member of Colorado and Bali, I'm kind of like surprised. Well, I didn't really expect that, a lot of people like really concerned about the specific movement. And also for the costume, I actually doing when I create like another like maybe two new dance piece after Laku, and then I like reuse this most of those elements. For example, because the galungan usually like in Balinese they always like to doing like for galungan like a hat like set in one set. It's not like one piece by piece like that. But I really like to, if I make a costume, I always want to like piece by piece, like you doing this first and then you add the other things more and then add the other like more like material. So that's why, because I'm thinking also I want to reuse that. So it's not just An or Laku dance. But of course I doing like different package, like different design, but still using the same material. And then also I want to get the new impression. So it's not like Laku anymore. So people won't realize that I think that's from Laku like that. But it's like look something new, but actually just reuse. And especially also for the kain, I also reuse that a lot. So it's not like waste or like forgotten. So Laku is still alive. Maybe in a different form like that. And also, yeah, yesterday I was talking with my friends that are making the costume. He's really talented. He graduated from ISI Denpasar. He also has like some idea for like costuming, because now the trend, like most of the dancer really like to use it like really like gold and then like so bright costume, and sometimes people are more concerned with the costume than the movement. So that's why I always want to use like a really like color and then combine this color together. So like the people when they watch us dancing, they're more concerned with the dance movement, but it also like quite like, and the costume is like support the dance. So it's not like the costume like independent, like the costume is different, and then it's like too much property, and then sometimes you can forget to watch the dance or can bother you when you're dancing. So I don't want that. So I make sure that the dancer feel comfortable when I design that. How do you feel for the headdress? Because usually the headdress is really heavy. So I'm trying to make the material is really light so they don't bother, when they're dancing.
Yeah.
So for the costume too, I want them really comfortable, because I want the costume to support the dance, but not as like just property, but also like part of the story behind the dance.
Right.
So my friend told me that a lot of my Balinese friend dancers ask for that costume if they can use that. I actually more like open, like, yeah, I think it's okay. It means that they appreciate that and then got inspired by that. But my friend told me, but I not allowed them to do that because I want this costume just special, like authentic for Laku. So I was like, wow, it's really like nice. So I don't actually like expect that answer, but he said like, but I want to make that like authentic for Laku. So I'm not, he's not using this design to make, for another dancer. So I really appreciate that actually.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, cool. Thank you guys.
Yeah, they can reuse that, but different form, not like Laku.
Sure. Cool. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Thanks, Jim.
All right, I think that was the last question, unless anything pops up right now. Putu, what was that other link that you sent me? Did you want us to share that as well?
Oh yeah, if you could share that. That was the link that Matt's going to share right now is our performance of Laku at PKB specifically. If you want to watch it or see it there. The video that we watched earlier isn't technically allowed to be shown, at least published in public, so it was more of a internal viewing. All right. But whatever, do whatever you want. Anyway, if there are no other questions or comments, thank you, Matt and Nusantara Arts. Thank you, Ayu, for waking up early. And thank you all for being here.
Everyone.
Yeah, this was about an hour and a half more than I intended just to allocate time.
That's how these always go. We have, you know what? I was talking earlier today with some friends who watched the Javanese lectures that we've done. And we started off around, like an hour and a half was sort of the starting point for those lectures. And they actually started stretching to about 3 hours. We've had, so yeah, we had 3 hour long lectures in the Javanese stuff. I do want to say that Sunday, we do have another duo lecture. So we have Putu Evi and Von Hatch from the Mekar Buwana Sanggar. And they're actually doing 2 lectures in a row. They have the first lecture, which is a bit about ecological issues and how they have been trying to be a little bit more conservation friendly at their center and in their performances. And I think it's going to probably touch on a bunch of different topics. And then the next week, they actually produced a documentary, an Indonesian language documentary about a form of Balinese music that was sort of lost. And they helped try to repatriate some of the recordings and recreate the instruments and recreate those pieces. So that's very interesting. And they actually just finished the English language Subtitles. So we're going to be watching that and then discussing that 2 weeks from Sunday. That should be very fun. So we look forward to seeing everybody at these 2 lectures. And then actually, we have another lecture coming up. The 3rd lecture is on Gamelan Suranam. Emily Clark is going to be presenting. So that's, if you're not familiar with that, there's a Gamelan in South America that's been there for several hundred years at least, because of some Dutch colonialism that brought Javanese people to Suriname. So that should be very interesting also. And thank you, everybody. Thank you, Ayu. Thank you, Putu. Thank you, everybody, for asking questions. And please visit our website if you haven't already and check out all the stuff we have going on. And we look forward to seeing you later. Thank you.
Cool. Thank you, Matt.
Thanks, Putu. Love you.
Who said that?
Christina, of course. Of course,
Love
it
you
was.
too. Oh yeah, Chris, that is your voice. Oh, love you all too. Bye. I'm hungry.
Thanks, guys. Bye.
Bye. Bye.